Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to do this. As you all know, we're kind of a newer group here, and we're trying to spread the word and get out there. Today, myself, Heath Freeman, John Westcott, and Jim McLennan, we're here to present, and some of our other members are online in case there's any questions. And today, we're excited to share something new with you guys that we haven't shown to anybody else yet. So Jim's going to present that, so that's kind of exciting for us. It's something we've been working on for a little while. So who are we? We're the Trout Trust. We were formed by Nada Raymond, Jim McLennan, and Gary Hankey because of the cumulative effects study that came out in 2020 or 2021. And in that study, they identified that angling pressure, water levels, and entrainment were the cause of declining fish populations on the Bow River. Nada, Jim, and Gary started discussing this data and asking questions about it, and they weren't happy to hear that entrainment wasn't even being considered as an item that would be addressed. So in 2023, the need for a group or organization to kind of bring this issue forward seemed evident. And in 2024, with the help of John Westcott and Alberta Council, the Trout Trust was born. So there's kind of we see our organization going through three phases. Our first phase was the launch just over a year ago. We're kind of in our second phase, trying to make it to our third phase, but we're mainly focusing on increasing our membership, getting the awareness out there, and trying to collaborate with groups such as the Freshwater Conservation. So our mission is to be a unified voice for all anglers, whether it's fly anglers or those other ones. Um, and we want to represent the interests of all of those that care about wild trout and the cold water environments. The Trout Trust sees entrainment we're not a group that's focused on the Bow River or entrainment. We want to focus on the issues Alberta wide, and we differentiate ourselves from groups such as you guys. We're not a boots on the ground kind of group. We're more of a lobbying group. And in a few minutes, I'll hand you off to John, and he'll kind of explain how we see ourselves a little bit different than other groups. But we chose entrainment as somewhere to start because we see that as a no-brainer. It's not controversial. It doesn't the results or fixing it doesn't affect anybody in a negative way. It's kind of a win-win. We see it as that perfect pitch down the middle of the plate, and all you got to do is swing the bat. We mostly also chose this topic because we feel like it's something that we can unite all anglers, like I said, not just the fly anglers. And with more people, we can have a stronger voice. So what have we done so far? Just I won't go through all of this, but some of the things we've created a relationship with the AWA. Jim's written some articles in the Wildlands Advocate. We did a membership presentation there. Jim's also done an article in Outdoor Canada magazine on the topic. Some podcasts like Let's Go Outdoors is an excellent one with Jim and John with Michael Short just 2-3 weeks ago. Fly Fishing 97. We are waiting for a podcast with April Volke. We've been kind of back and forth, just trying to make our schedules lined up. So we're kind of excited about that. Something Jim's going to tell you about that we're excited about is the Paul Brandt partnership. The Canadian Women's Fly Fishers, we did presentations there. We just recently did the Bow River Trout Foundation presentation, and that went really well. We're excited about opportunities there. They're very interested in this topic. We had a young man of 12 years old present this topic on entrainment at a school-led program called Caring for Watersheds. And it was actually a competition where he placed third, which was very exciting to get our kind of topic out there. having a 12-year-old talking about entrainment is kind of exciting. Some of the interested parties, the indigenous groups, the irrigation districts, and the Farmers Alliance. And then with government, we've had some roundtable conversations with agriculture, fisheries, and management. We've had meet and greets with ministers through Alberta Council, and John can tell you a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Heath. Um, so I'm John Westcott. I'm currently the managing partner of a lobbyist firm in Edmonton called Alberta Council. We're located right across the street from the legislature, which conveniently means that we get some time and touches with government on a regular basis at all levels. That right from caucus and cabinet all the way down to administrative staff. We're Alberta's largest lobbying firm by a factor of about three. And one of the things that we get to do in the senior management group is pick on a pro bono file. Everybody gets to pick a pro bono file, something we're going to do for free, something that we have a passion for, and something that we think is in the interest of community and community development. So those that know me know I'm either working, I'm parenting, or I'm fishing. Those are about the only three things that apparently fill my day. And when it came to having discussions with the Trout Trust team, it became apparent that an outreach to government was important, especially when discussing with government some of the organizations that were being included in stakeholder outreach and consultations and things of that nature. Going back to Jason Nixon's office and others, it became apparent that, well, hunters are well represented because of gun rights and issues and whatnot and licenses and tags. The anglers were consistently overlooked or at least marginalized in a reasonable way. And so that that became sort of the focus for me and my office to say this is a pro bono file that we would be happy to take on and work with the Trout Trust Group to help organize and present meaningful um, debate with government and engage government in a way that is creative and constructive. And so our firm, just so that you know, also is multi-partisan. So that means on our staff, we've got everything from the right wing UCP, former MLAs, to the left wing NDP, staunch conservation, and environmentalists. And so by bringing packages to government and working with groups, we have an ability to take complex issues and simplify them, or be able to work from the bottom up or the top down to make sure that an entire department or multiple departments understand what's going on. And so working closely with the Trout Trust team, we're putting together what is the advocacy package for trout, for Alberta, and knocking on government's door and saying, look, we think, and you guys know these are issues. We want to work with you constructively through the expertise and the membership and community support networks that we have to say, let's look at some of these, let's make them a priority. Because one of the things that we learn very quickly at our office is if you're not the squeaky wheel, you're not on the agenda sometimes. And so that doesn't mean we have to pound fists and throw shows, but it does mean that you need to be on the top of everybody's mind when it's regulatory changes and consultations, when it's entrainment reports, when it's working through administration, or when it's working with government at the caucus and cabinet level. So we've managed. I managed to voluntold a number of our staff to work with me on this project and make sure that we work collaboratively with government in an effort to try and bring the Trout Trust priorities to government. The first one, of course, being entrainment, and a few others that Heath and others will talk about, being fish handling and education, regulatory reform, and things of that nature. One of the final pieces that we hope we bring to the table is that we represent or work with a number of other stakeholder groups that are of interest to trout and the Trout Trust, including the irrigation associations and the beef producers and landowners and other types of organizations like that throughout Alberta. Heath?
All right, I'm gonna hand you over to Jim, and Jim's got something to tell you about.
Yes. I am unmuted, it looks like. Good. Yeah, we're excited to talk to you guys tonight, and because you're familiar, friendly faces, and I think we're all on the same team. One of the things we undertook, it started quite a while ago, and we didn't think it was going to take as long as it has, but was to make a short film about this issue of entrainment. And entrainment, which might not have already been defined, is when fish get trapped in irrigation canals, and you'll learn all about it on this film. So this is the world premiere of this film, and this is not the final version. It's very close. This has my voice narrating it. In the end, it will have Paul Brandt's voice narrating it, and you'll see Paul in the film here too. I'm not sure if he's watching from the sidelines, but the man who did all the filming and all the editing is Jade Hertz, and I don't see his name on the list here. But Jade, if you're here, just say hello or wave or something. And he's put in many hours of work on this thing. So we really appreciate him doing it, and we appreciate you folks taking a look at it. So we'll have a look at the film that takes, I don't know, 13 minutes or something. And then if you have any questions, we'll be happy to address them at the end. So I guess hit play, Heath.
Can we increase quality?
I don't think so. Yeah, that's the other thing. This is low res, so it will be high res when you see it in a theater or something. I also don't hear anything. Am I the only one who can't hear it?
Nope, can't
No
hear it.
sound.
There are a number of different conservation organizations already active in this realm, yet there seems to be a lack of unity of purpose. The Trout Trust.
Here, I'll do it
There we go.
again. Sorry. Everybody hear it now?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Paul and I would like to introduce you to a new organization in Alberta called the Trout Trust. The Trout Trust is comprised of a group of people who value water, especially free-flowing, moving water, as a natural resource of benefit to all people. There are a number of different conservation organizations already active in this realm, yet there seems to be a lack of unity of purpose. The Trout Trust's goal is to speak directly with government and the public, uniting the voices of anglers and others concerned about the future of our wild trout.
Thanks, Jim. This organization's initial focus is on the health of the Bow River fishery, specifically changes and challenges in its trout population. As a way of introducing the Trout Trust and its first objective and explaining how you can be of help, we'd like you to watch this short story and film. It's an important story about this river, our river, your river.
Our story has many participants, but two key characters. The first is the Bow River. Born in glaciers above Lake Louise in the Rockies of western Alberta, the Bow courses southeastward from Bow Lake to the town of Banff, spills over Bow Falls, and winds through dramatic mountain peaks and forests of evergreen and larch. A bit downstream in the foothills, the river slows through several reservoirs, drives 4 hydroelectric dams, and supplies fresh water, power, and recreation to the users along its path. Where the foothills bleed into the Great Plains, the Bow finds itself in the service of 1.6 million people who live in the city of Calgary. Downstream of the humming city, the river is dramatically different. No longer the high-spirited mountain stream of its origins, the Bow is now a meandering and stately prairie river. It is home, food source, and lifeblood for abundant and diverse wildlife, including fish. Rainbow, brown, cutthroat, bull, and brook trout, mountain whitefish, and forage fish live and thrive in the river and its tributaries. Albertans were the first to recognize the jewel on their doorstep as both playground and sacred domain, and reveled in its beauty and opportunity for recreation. One of these is fly fishing. Albertans were the first to understand that the Bow River, with its large and powerful rainbow and brown trout, was something very special. Over time, fly fishers worldwide came to know about this river through its numerous appearances in print and on screen. In time, the Bow developed a reputation as one of the finest trout fishing rivers in the world. Today, visiting anglers continue to support Calgary and area's fishing guides, tackle shops, hotels, restaurants, and conservation organizations. After 40 years in the fly fishing limelight, the Bow River's legacy endures. The other main character in our story is Alberta's irrigation industry. Since the turn of the 20th century, water has been diverted from rivers and delivered by lengthy canals to the otherwise arid farm country of Southern Alberta. The Bow's water breathes life into dryland crops like wheat, barley, and canola, commodities essential to Alberta's economy and the livelihoods of Alberta farmers. Water is diverted into irrigation canals annually starting in April and moves from the rivers to the crop fields until irrigation season is complete in the fall, when the gates are closed and the canals dry up. There are 2 diversions on the Bow, owned and operated by Alberta Environment and Parks. The first is the Western Headworks Canal in Calgary, which takes Bow River water 25 kilometers south and east to 95,000 acres of farmland in the Western Irrigation District. The second is the Carsland Headworks Canal near the town of Carsland, where a 66-kilometer canal delivers water east to 3 further reservoirs and 251,000 acres of farmland in the Bow River Irrigation District. A world-renowned trout stream and a thriving irrigation industry? Strange bedfellows? Sure, but Alberta needs agriculture, and in Southern Alberta, agriculture needs irrigation. The irrigation industry has grown through more than a century of restructuring and relicensing, diverting, drawing, and draining, but repaying very little to the now docile and domesticated rivers that provide it with water. Irrigation canals take water from the Bow for justifiable reasons, but there is collateral damage to the very soul of the Bow River, which for many people is its fish. Bow River fish have unimpeded access to both of these canals when the canals carry water through the summer irrigation season, and many fish enter the canals then because there is simply nothing to stop them. But when the water to the canals is shut off in the fall and the canals dry up, the fish are stranded and die, either soon after or later when ice forms on remaining deep spots during harsh Alberta winters. It's a one-way trip for these fish. The technical word for this loss of fish is entrainment. It's a rather passive-sounding term, but entrainment is a serious issue today on the Bow and a number of other Alberta rivers, including the Oldman, Waterton, and Belly, where entrainment affects several species at risk.
Irrigation is very important to the economy of Alberta. We all realize that. We all benefit from it. But we all also benefit from the economic benefits of a healthy fishery.
In an effort to soften the blow of entrainment, but primarily to draw attention to the situation, Trout Unlimited Canada has conducted fish rescues every autumn since 1998. In small, targeted portions of these canals, volunteers capture stranded fish and return them to the river. It's a last-ditch effort to save fish that would otherwise die. Since 1998, trout rescues have returned 329,000 fish to the Bow from the Carsland Canal alone. But the fish rescues take place on just 5 kilometers of this canal. The canal is 66 kilometers long. Nobody knows how many fish are left to die in the remainder of the canal or are flushed into reservoirs downstream. And the Western Headworks Canal in Calgary has delivered an additional 115,000 fish to the fish rescues. That's a lot of fish. Not all of them are sport fish. The others are forage fish that the sport fish eat. But every fish is a critical cog in an ecosystem that has been disrupted and desecrated. The trout rescues have saved many fish, and some people believe that the rescues are a solution to the entrainment problem. This is an unfortunate and incorrect assumption. Fish rescues are not a solution to the problem. In 1998, after the first fish rescue, Trout Unlimited Canada President Alan Harvey said that the real solution to the problem is not an annual fish rescue, but a fish exclusion device that prevents fish from entering the canals in the first place. The Trout Trust believes he was right. Since that statement was made a quarter century ago, nothing has been done to address entrainment on the Bow. That's only part of the history. A formal report to the federal government from the Dominion, Alberta, and Saskatchewan Fisheries Commission said this: the subject of irrigation ditches came prominently before the Commission, especially in Southern Alberta, and there was abundant evidence to show that considerable damage had been done and is being done to the fisheries of these streams by the lack of proper exclusion screens. The date of this report? 1910. Both anglers and Alberta government biologists have expressed concern about an apparent decline in the population of adult fish in the Bow in and downstream of Calgary. In 2020, Alberta Environment and Parks identified 3 major stressors on Bow River trout populations: flows impacted by water releases from dams, entrainment of fish in irrigation canals, and incidental mortality from catch and release angling.
Bow River trout are under pressure. Provincial government biologists have identified a significant population decline in trout in the Bow River. And I think all of us that fish the river regularly have noticed this change. I think it's quite apparent.
In 2022, provincial biologist Mike Sullivan expanded on this, saying, "We learned 2 things from over 20 years of fish population data. Young fish are consistently abundant in the Bow, but we have experienced rapid and high losses of older fish. As a rule of thumb, we generally see declines in young fish with habitat or disease issues. Big fish loss is almost always a harvest or entrainment issue." The Alberta government has concluded that the Bow River has too many anglers and/or too few fish. But to date, the only response from the government has been the suggestion of limiting the number of anglers and/or implementing restrictions on fishing seasons, angling gear, and angling methods.
There's some pressure to address the fish mortality, the catch and release mortality by limiting angler numbers. But I don't believe this is a good step. The river needs its anglers because those anglers are friends to the fish, they're friends to the river, they're friends to the fishery itself. We need all the anglers we can manage because we need friends. The river needs friends.
The provincial government apparently realized the urgency of the situation when Mike Sullivan said, "If we wait for more evidence and more decline, it means a situation even worse for the rainbows and potentially harsher and longer restrictions for anglers." Yet in 2023, ignoring its own acknowledgement of urgency, the Agricultural and Fisheries Ministries initiated a study to analyze the data from Trout Unlimited's fish rescues. The results of this study were delivered to the public in March 2025. The report included recommendations for yet more studies and analyses, but most significantly implied that the entrainment problem is worse than earlier research suggested and is likely the major stressor on Bow River fish populations.
Do the right thing. That's my plea. Do the right thing for Alberta's future, for the future of our kids that would like to fish this river and enjoy a healthy environment.
While studies like these represent progress in research, they are not actual progress nor action. The extent of the problem is known, physical solutions exist, and anglers must unite to push for real progress, which is the installation of fish exclusion structures. While no one knows precisely how many fish have died in irrigation canals in Alberta through the years, the fish rescue numbers, along with plain old common sense, point directly to this fact: far, far too many. It is imperative that the Alberta government take the obvious steps of installing fish exclusion devices at the headworks of both irrigation canals on the Bow River. The time has come to fix this and to keep fish in the river where they belong and out of irrigation canal death traps.
We know that entrainment of Bow River trout in irrigation canals has been going on since early in the 20th century. We know it's still happening today. We know it shouldn't be happening, and we know there are ways of preventing it from happening. The health of the fishery would be significantly improved if technology was used to keep these fish from entering the canals in the first place. The idea of addressing entrainment has been relegated to the back burner for too long.
If this is done, no one would lose their recreation on the river, and no one would lose access to irrigation water for agriculture. Everyone knows this is the right thing to do. So it comes down to political will. The Trout Trust is asking people who care about the Bow River to contact their MLAs, the Alberta Environment, and the irrigation ministries to encourage them to bring priority to this issue. Let's give the river back its own fish, those fish that for now are destined to die in irrigation canals. Thanks.
Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sob sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sorrow of the weary. Hard times come again no more.
All right, so that pretty much concludes our presentation there. We this presentation is more about letting groups know what we're about, and it's also an invitation to collaborate with like-minded groups like the Northern Lights Fly Fishers. We see our commitment to the cold water conservation and reducing fish loss is an aligned like-mind thought. The Trout Trust brings a province-wide lens and a broad access to conservation networks and advocacy groups. And the Northern Lights Fly Fishers offers deep community roots, a strong track record on the water, and fit with fish issues, and it has a very engaged membership base. So yeah, we can open the floor up to any questions or any comments.
I can make an initial comment just to say that this is the first time we've tried to show this via Zoom, and there were some things that actually exist in the film that didn't appear, or at least weren't heard. There's a whole track of music that's there too, and I don't know why it doesn't show up when you Zoom it, but now we know that it doesn't. So anyway, there's the first comment.
Jim, I think that the last one would be, we come to you also with an ask, and the ask is, of course, threefold. It's one, to help spread the word of the Trout Trust, and continue to advocate zealously for trout across Alberta, with your own organization and hopefully in concert with ours. The second one would be, we encourage you to research supporting the Trout Trust by way of membership or volunteer time or anything like that. And you can find that on the website at thetrouttrust.com. And I think the last one, of course, is that we look forward to, as Heath said, collaboration with like-minded groups, so that when we go to government, we can say, either by letters of support or by co-representation, that these are priorities for other groups as well, and that we go with a unified voice.
I have a question, if I could. Do you have an estimated cost for putting in the exclusion devices?
Who wants to go take this?
I can respond to that. There's
Okay.
They vary, Peter. Depends on the overall length of the system. There needs to be studies done to, which type is best suited for that specific weir. Can we use a mechanical screen system? Can we use a sound barrier system? Can we use a light barrier system? Can we use a air bubbling system? There's lots of options out there. So everyone has to be assessed on its own merits. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of them in Alberta. There's enough, but it's not as if we're looking at 40 or 50 weir systems that we should consider exclusion devices on. There's a handful of them. I think there is, Jim, I think there's what, 6 to 8, I think, across all Alberta.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'm only familiar with like from here south and
Yeah, well,
the Belly,
I'm
the
not worried
Waterton.
about stuff north. That's a
Yeah.
different way
Yeah.
again. But anything with trout, so the Belly River, the Old Man, the St. Mary's, the Bow.
Yeah, that may be about it. Waterton.
That's about it. So there's a half a dozen. But we're looking at different systems, and I've even reached out to Europe now. One of the head of fisheries in Wales, and he has many years of experience with irrigation systems and canals. The difference there is theirs don't freeze like ours do, so we have to look at climate conditions for some of this equipment. So it needs to be dived into deeper. Some people have suggested it could be millions of dollars. I don't believe that. They want to compare it to a 1 kilometer long exclusion device that was developed in the US, and we don't have anything here that's over 30 meters in length. So it's quite a difference in comparison. It's new ground. It's new things for government to look at.
Yeah, so that means we don't know the cost
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long answer. We don't know the actual cost.
until we know what structures make the most sense for this river in this circumstance.
Okay.
We've got a question on the floor.
Back in late 70s, early 80s, Jim and I were just doing the guiding on the Bow River. They had a screen across the rear cars land, effectively keeping the fairly substantial fish out of the canal. And when the grass started drifting through, it plugged up the screen, and the gatekeeper at the canal took out the screen so the water would flow. And it's never been put back, and that's where the big bunch of trout got into the canal at Carsland, was because they had the screen and they removed it.
Yeah, understandable, and I recall that myself. There are self-cleaning systems out there as well. Again, it's, which system is the most appropriate? Is the vegetation today similar to what we had back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s? It's a lot less from my understanding. So it's still an issue, but is it, or would it be as drastic? We're not sure. The mechanical systems that are out there self-cleaning do work well. They're used worldwide. So again, it's not a technical issue. It would be an issue of will.
It's just time to get it going. It's time to get something going. I mean, it's, since 1910, it's been a problem. It's been a known problem, and it's just time. And the decision makers need to do the right thing, just as Eric said in the film. That's
uniquely, this is not an Alberta problem. This is a worldwide problem. So there's lots of resources available. Lots of groups, governments, countries have gone through this in the past. There's lots of successes worldwide. There's no reason why we can't foster the same success here.
Exactly.
Has there been any effort to start a pilot program in Alberta with something that's thought to be appropriate?
I think Nada has some information. I'm not sure if she's available.
Right, I am here, Gary. I'm sorry, I don't have my camera on at the moment. So Yes, there was a pilot program done, but it was done on the Highwood River, and actually it resolved the problem on the Highwood River. It was a women's coolie diversion. So yes, it has been done, but no, it hasn't been done on anything of significant size here. Trout Trust would actually like to go forth and raise some funds to see if we can do it on a mid-sized river, because none of those are the priority. The Bow River is the priority because it's a world-class fishery. But so whilst it's in potentially in our remit and something that we would consider doing on one of the smaller diversions, it does come back down to the government. I mean, to go back to the issue of cost, I think agriculture, I don't have the numbers here with me right now, but 6.6 billion, I think it is, that it contributes to the Alberta economy annually. Fixing all of the diversions and putting exclusion devices in all of those would be a drop in the ocean compared to that.
If that figure was the amount of, I'm not sure, I think at least you broke up on my computer native, that's what the irrigation industry contributes to Alberta's
Correct.
GDP. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's their economical figures is what they produce, right? So it's they have an absolutely massive budget, and they're not alone on this as well. I mean, there's some responsibilities as well to government. The original contracts that were written for this was mandatory in exclusion devices to be fostered on these weirs. That was written out a number of years, about 2012 by the DFO. The reasoning behind it doesn't seem to be understood by anyone. So that would suggest that it's also part of responsibility of the Alberta government, let alone Irrigation Farmers Alliance. There's a multitude of purses that could draw from us, not just one purse.
So if you, I seem to be at a loss here. Cost-wise, is there a ballpark number? Pick one site, a ballpark number. Let's say Carsland, where the main flow is going into that big diversion, Bow River District. Is there a ballpark number what a middle of the road or some sort of a device is going to cost?
The closest estimation that I've heard came from somebody at Trout Unlimited when it was called that. And they said, the Bow River diversion could cost upwards of 50 million because it's a retrofit. Unless they waited 20 years when all the mechanics there need to be replaced, in which case it would probably be half of that. But yeah, those are numbers if you want numbers. Yeah, it could be upwards of 50 million in terms of a commitment from the government.
Wow.
Yeah. Another question that probably we should know because it's with regard to our parent organization, but I don't know the answer. I'd heard that Trout Unlimited, which is now Freshwater Conservation Canada, was going to discontinue the trout rescue program because of basically what you said in the presentation, that the impact is minimal, that in fact by doing it, it may in some sense impede the government from doing what it needs to do. Has that happened, or do you know what the status is of that?
I spoke to Sylvia about this maybe a month or so ago, and I don't know if this has been a final decision from Freshwater Conservation Canada, but what she told me was her inclination was what they should do is if the government doesn't do something, they will stop the fish rescues.
Yeah.
One of the key things that came out of our initial research from social media platforms, our members, the overwhelming understanding amongst anglers and otherwise was the trout rescue was the solution to the problem. And I think that maybe that's been realized. And the government was funding that to the tune of 50,000 every year, which made those reports disappear as well. They became a product of the government. And so people weren't seeing what kind of numbers were there in what length of canal, and they weren't able to draw their own conclusions from it.
I think the most important thing about the studies is that data that was collected by Trout Unlimited over the years has led to the what's called the Corman study. It's brought this issue up, and the government's aware of it now. That study suggests that upwards of 8.5% of the rainbow trout lost in the Bow River is from these irrigation canals. There is some movement happening now as a result of that study. It's not happening as fast as we want it to happen, but it's an issue that's rose up, and there's some awareness of it.
Well, and I think it increases higher than that, Heath, too, because that same study talks about when you start increasing high canal flow rates, like they did in 2021 when we had the big heat wave through, and that entrainment rose up to almost 25% of the total population of the Carsland headworks there. So, I mean, we're not talking an insignificant number when you're talking 10% of trout and, up to 25% in a drought year when you're starting high canal flow rates. And, when we talk about fish rescue, albeit a dated study, those dated to 2003 and whatnot, they were talking that, in a 10-hour rescue at the Carsland Weir, they saved 9,000 fish, but in total in Alberta in any given year, it's less than 1% that is usually recovered and rescued.
Right, and what's important is that all of these comments come as a result of the Trout Unlimited rescues. If those hadn't been done, we'd now be starting the study of those losses. So it was important, but it did mislead people.
Yeah, it's done its job. Like
Right.
we all agree it wasn't the solution, but it's created the awareness. And unfortunately, it took 27 years for it to do its job.
It's very valuable data that has a lot of merit behind it that supports a lot of claims today. So,
and what it has pointed out is it's the only data that the government has to look at, and it has pointed out the absolute bare minimum number of fish that have been lost, because the number of fish that have moved from the river into the canals, because those fish were caught and counted. So whatever the real number is, it's bigger than the number that have been caught in the fish rescues, and that number is a big number.
I assume there's no data on the Old Man or the Waterton or St. Mary's. That's all.
There will be. I mean, there are some fish rescues go on down there, so they will have some numbers. Gary, or does anybody know about that a little more?
There is some, as mentioned, and Trout Unlimited had gathered some as well, so it sort of parallels what was going on with the bow. But uniquely, there's a bunch of Ceres species at risk involved in those systems as well, which include bow trout, cutthroat trout, a brassy minnow, and a Rocky Mountain sculpin. They're all on the endangered species list. So when they catch a bull trout, let's say in the St. Mary's or the Old Man, they have to apply for a permit to transfer it from the capture site to a release site. So there's some irony in that, like it shouldn't be there in the first place, right? And then we have to go through the loops and hoops to get this thing back to its native water. But it's a worse problem. From speaking with the affiliate group down there, Chinook Winds group, and there's a lot of guys in there involved, biologists, just to name a few guys like Paul, I can't remember his last name now. But he's involved with fisheries down there. He's a big member there, and they've expressed that the fish population in the canals is quite a bit larger than what we have in the Bow River and systems.
Can I go back to the question I asked earlier? When Gary was presenting the response to the question about types of exclusion technologies, it sounded like we weren't sure at all what to use.
I'm not a
And
mechanic and I'm not on site, so I can't make that a consultation assessment based on that. That would be someone within fisheries and contract that could do that. But I can't personally fairly come up with.
But it struck me again, I want to go back to what I asked earlier, and that is, why isn't there a priority on trying to generate some data on appropriate exclusion technologies to be used on our rivers? I mean, it could, if government finally does decide, then they might do a 10-year study on the appropriate technologies. Shouldn't we
I
or
think
coalition?
that may be coming. We're trying to talk them into possibly not a 10-year study, but 5 or less, preferably nothing longer than 3, because they have enough data already. They know their systems, their equipment well enough. They have all the drawings and blueprints, the contractors that work on the dams. I don't think, putting a roof on the building is going to be an issue. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a huge issue. It might be a little bit too late in some cases, but I don't think that it's a major construction problem. Not with my experience in construction anyways.
Gary, if I might, I think the priority is to make sure that government understands that there's people watching this and sitting on the sidelines, participating, that have decided to get active and advocate for solutions. And what those solutions are best left up for now to the engineers and fisheries. But we do have an idea of those types of mitigation measures that can be recommended, behavioral deterrence and intake screens and those types of technologies. But it's really about keeping their feet to the fire and the pressure on saying, you may have come out with a study, but what are you doing about it? And do you know about these solutions? Can we introduce you to other stakeholders? Can we continue to put this on your radar as a priority so that that the public in particular is watching and encouraging you to do the right thing?
Right. I'd echo that, John, and just say, we know about the technologies that are out there. We know what's available, but we don't know what would fit with the Carsland Weir or any of the other diversions in Alberta. But then it's not our responsibility. We're here to let the government know that we're here and watching, and we're going to push them along so that it's not the 10 years. We want them to act quickly because the public are interested, which is why, and I'll come back to John's earlier comments, we need support. We need letters of support. We need people signing out petitions, and to maybe spread this order to your members, because without that support, they won't chivvy along. They won't move this issue along. They haven't for so long, and they're not motivated until people get on board.
Yeah, we just want to get them to realize, to acknowledge, which they kind of have, that this is a big problem, that it's time to solve it, and the next step is to get on with determining which structures or which method of avoiding entrainment is best for here. And as Nita said, I guess they're probably saying, well, I wonder whose job that is, and we're saying it's yours.
And I fully agree. It is their job. I have a fear with it, though, that if it doesn't get pushed and focus stays on it, and it falls by the wayside with the government, the alternative is, and it was already mentioned, in the cumulative effects, is now putting the measure on the angler, limiting rod hours, limiting who knows what next. I'm not sure, as an angler in this province, I want to lose more opportunities to fish less rod hours or have to buy special license so I can fish the river this year, maybe not next year if it's a draw system, or who knows what they'll come up with. I think there's other things we can do before we get to punishing the angler.
Yes.
You mentioned people in government. In fisheries, is there someone in particular that you've been dealing with, like Matt Besco or Shane Petrie or anyone?
John? Oh, where'd John go?
Sorry, I'm back. I just had to step out for a second, parenting duty. But on the administration side, we usually work with the deputy ministers group and then below into the fisheries. So we're at this stage, we're working from the top down. And I know NADA and some of the other group have been working with some of the other administrative technical staff. But from the lobbyist perspective, it's about getting the senior bureaucrats and the senior elected officials to engage. So it's working with the minister, it's working with the deputy minister, it's working with the agriculture deputy minister who happens to be a fly fisher as well. And so that's sort of the initial outreach that we've been working on to be friendly in a way that, you know, we don't want to be the scary face that shows up. We want to be the helpful face that helps to move the thing along. And you know, I'm a big believer in multiple touches, and so this takes a few touches at the beginning, and then you know, when they realize that they can work with you as opposed to always butting heads with you, then we can move into the next stages.
So is there one individual that, for example, if we should get involved in an advocacy role as well, is there any one particular individual you direct us to?
In terms of the department or in terms of working collaboratively with the Trout Trust? See,
I guess
because
in
one of the
terms
challenges is
of,
we don't want to, we have to make sure that we don't have mixed messages going across
right.
as well. And so, you know, when we talk to other stakeholder groups, you know, the Bow River Trout Foundation and others like that, they often have very specific and targeted advocacy plans. And so we highly recommend that they stick to those and, you know, and work with us by way of letters of support or assistance in volunteer time, or if you have information that can help. And then when we approach government, we can say, look, we have the support of the Bow River Trout Foundation, the Northern Lights groups, these types of things. And if you have, these are their contacts. They've been brought up to speed on our efforts and on our policies. And you know, we can always keep you in the loop that way as well. And so, you know, in terms of redundancy, I think it's important. In terms of supporting in the advocacy, I think it's important spreading the word, you know, when you're out with your own advocacy things. If there's a little plug, we usually do that for other groups we're working with, you know, hey, you know, have you talked to these guys? They're important. The Bow River guys are talking about flow rates, or they're talking about you know, entrainment isn't necessarily their primary focus. And so if we're talking, we sort of lead hints and assist other groups along the way as well.
Okay.
So in that respect, I would say anyone in the Trout Trust group is a great contact to work with, and we have sort of our own sub teams within the organization. And so you know, my delegate role in part is advocacy. So I'm happy if you want to reach out to me at any time.
And Peter, on the Trout Trust website, there's a heading or a tab you can push that says write your MLA. I mean, you can always do that. That's not a bad thing ever. And the ministers too, the environment, agriculture. What else?
Well, we have the new associate minister for water.
Oh, okay.
You know, Associate Minister Hunter has just been appointed to that role the beginning of the month. And so that's a new one. And especially with the opening of the Water Act in the last 60 days, I mean, that's going to be a real hot topic. And there's some significant friction between government departments, lack of stakeholder consultations. There's a lot of criticism out there right now on the Water Act piece and water licenses. But yeah, any of those groups and cabinet are great in that respect. Fisheries and Parks, Todd Lowen, or Parks and Recreation. Also, you know, he's in charge of regs, of course. And you know, we constantly have contact with a number of those departments, and energy, of course.
Yeah, Jim, it's Dennis. Question on memberships. Has freshwater conservation bought into the Trout Trust?
Very hard to hear you back there, Dennis.
Okay, I'll move up here.
Thank you.
I think Dennis has asked if
Get away
freshwater
from my-
conservation has bought into the Trout Trust philosophy.
What
Or
I'm
program.
getting at though is we're a member of conservation, freshwater conservation. So Northern Lights, as Northern Lights, can't sign on as membership without their permission. So what we need to know is, as Sylvia said, yes, it's to go to have them as part of your membership.
Well, I certainly, when I spoke to Sylvia, she was supportive of what we're doing and said, yeah, that this is a problem. It needs to be addressed. And we've received a lot of assistance from the TU staff as far as, their documenting of the fish rescues and their thoughts on what, what needs to be done. So I don't know that there's an official endorsement in writing anywhere from freshwater conservation, but certainly through personal communications, I would say yes. Anybody else in the group want to comment on that or tell me I'm crazy or something?
Yeah, we could easily find that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if a corporate alignment develops, I mean, that's wonderful. But I think our ask was more direct to the individuals and hence the presentation to you guys with your membership, right? Let's start there and then work on the rest.
And that was going to be my second question. You can join the Trout Trust individually then.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And is there a cost?
$25 for a year.
Oh, geez, that'll break the bank. No, that's what I'm getting at is the fact that
Yeah.
as a club, we may not be able to do it, but we could do it individually.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And you can, just spread the word, on,
Absolutely.
I recommend to everyone that's involved or would like to be involved, put it on your personal Instagram, your personal Facebook page, any place you can get away with it corporately. If you have a corporate page that would be supportive of that, I don't know, if you got a fly tying shop in your basement, for example, you could, say, yeah, I support this, kind of thing.
And also, if we could get a letter of support from the group, that would be great too. That's another thing we're trying to get is so that we can submit this to the government.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I understand. Sure.
So yeah, as an organization, that's what we'd ask you to do is, if you can put together a short, letter of support of what the Trout Trust is doing, particularly with entrainment, that would be great. And as far as individuals, become members.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Or volunteers.
Or what?
Called upon. Or volunteers when called upon.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's a section on the website that when you sign up for a membership or for information, you can click and say that you're willing to volunteer some time as well. So feel free to do that. And then when we send out newsletters or updates or beats or things like that, you'll be kept in the know.
It could be a fun thing down the road too, like as a volunteer, if you're in the Headworks area this particular weekend, it's going to freeze, try and take as many photos as you like. So it'll be kind of a photo opportunity. It's not going to be anything that's going to be physically demanding, crazy, as volunteers. I mean, it's, we'd probably use a lot of the volunteers to fill gaps that we're not able to do all the time.
Yeah. And sorry, I missed a name. The lady who was talking.
Nada?
Nada Raymond.
Maida. Oh, okay. And one other personal question. Excuse me. I have an interest in dialects. Where are you from?
Going to be the question. I grew up in Malvern, just Worcestershire, the place that none of the Canadians can say, and then studied at Burns University and quickly left and came to Canada about 12 years ago.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I'm glad you're teaching the rest of them how to speak properly.
Yeah.
I always tell my son the Queen taught me how to speak, so he should speak properly. So I did want to add a little something, just as we wrap up here. I know that there was some eyebrows raised, I guess, when Trout Trust first came about, and people thought that we were diluting the conservation landscape in Canada, in Alberta, actually. And I just
She
want
said
to,
Alberta. Alberta.
Anyways.
Sorry.
That's the Queen's English, by the way.
Carry on. I'm sorry.
on that, what we're doing is we're kind of sitting off to the side with an all of Alberta focus. We have the lobbying powers. We won't be accepting funds from anyone. We're very independent, and we're here to work with other conservation groups. Whilst we're working with entrainment for now, because it's a no-brainer issue, we want to know what the issues are that the other conservation groups have, and then help them get that to the next level. So we're not in competition. We're not, sitting above anyone or trying to take over any issues. We're just trying to get anglers on the same page so that we're heard better at that upper government level.
Sorry, I just have one final question for you. Have you had any involvement at all with the Alberta Conservation Association on the issue?
Not yet. They're on my list, Peter.
Yeah.
Do you have any contacts there whom we might reach out to? Or
Yeah, Todd Zimmerling. He's the president.
is that a connection you could perhaps make?
Yeah. Let me follow up on that, and I'll get back to you.
That's ACA, correct?
Yeah, the ACA. Yeah.
What about
Good.
Alberta Fish and Game?
Alberta Wilderness, they did that.
Is that? They're changing the name.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Maida, did we not have some involvement with ACA already?
No, AWA.
Oh, AWA, okay. My apologies.
And then likewise, not the Alberta Wildlife Federation either. That used to be Alberta Fish and Game, right? They haven't been involved with you?
No, not yet.
Okay. I'll follow that one up too. Yeah, be interesting.
Yeah, for sure, Peter. And, if you wanted us to repeat the presentation, if there's a better time for your membership, we're happy to do that as well. Really, it is about getting numbers behind us. And it's not necessarily about the 25 bucks. It's more about the names and the organizations. If the government can see that we're all getting on the same page behind one issue, they're going to listen better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess thanks very much, fellas and ladies, for the presentation, wonderful presentation.